Hey, so I'm going to unpack what I brought on this most recent fall bikepacking trip in the mountains. It's October, and for this trip, we're riding between 5 and 9,000 feet in elevation, mostly on single track in central Idaho. Temperatures ranged from about 30 degrees to 80 degrees, and nights were pretty long and cold, and it took them a while for the mornings to warm up. We had pretty regular water, and we're expecting to be out all day each day riding. So I'm going to go through how everything was packed exactly now that it's post-trip, what I think of how it all came together gear-wise, and what I would change in the future. So in my handlebar bag, I always carry my sleep kit up here, and sometimes a little bit more clothes. So it's what I don't want to get into during the day. In this Rebel 8 pronghorn system, I have my layers that I would sleep in. So Patagonia R1, some thermal long underwear and underwear, and some warmer wool socks. Those are clothes I really never rode in. And I have my sleeping bag, the Western mountaineering bag rated to about 30 degrees. It's the highlight, maybe 32. A inflatable sleeping pad, bumrest, and then I bring an inflatable pillow because I sleep better with a pillow. And that's it for my handlebar bag. This is pretty standard for me. The base layers will change depending on the season, but that was a good system for this trip. And then continuing in the bags, I used the Old Man Mountain Elkhorn rack for this trip. Made a whole separate video on how the rack's set up, how I loaded it specifically for performance, and what I thought about riding with it. So you can see that YouTube also on my channel. But as far as what was in it, this was more packed with the intention of being able to bring warmer layers for a colder mountain riding trip. So you're gonna see in here my puffy jacket, which is a lightweight synthetic puffy. And then that plus the R1 and some other layers were basically what I had brought to the trailhead. And then on the first morning when we were about to leave, I realized it was colder than I expected and actually wished I had more. So I brought this wool flannel that I had traveled in. This is definitely the rogue layer for this trip, and I'll talk more about maybe a way to make this system better because the flannel is pretty heavy and bulky. But that said, I had the space for it with this rear rack bag, and I wore it every single day and night. And so I'm psyched I brought it because I was actually warm. Had a pair of pants or shorts that I wore some days, and when not wearing them, they're packed. My ground sheet, tie back. And then also in here is my little titanium pot with a koozie for hydrating meals. And inside the pot, I pack my stove, my little HydroPack speed cup for coffee, and a HydroPack 1 liter stove for that extra liter of water capacity, which I did use the first night when we were dry camping. And then lastly in here is a headband for warm ears at night. So this bag was basically the stuff that didn't really fit ideally into the handlebar bag, were generally lighter, bulkier things like the layers and also the pot. So I didn't have to put those in a backpack, which I often would have, all this stuff would have distributed between the handlebar bag and a backpack if I was riding without the rack. In the center of my bike, between the frame bag, the down tube bag, and the jerry can, This is mostly where I carried food and repair stuff, so generally more accessible and heavier. Down in this down tube bag, I always add a volet strap, just for extra security, and then if I need a volet strap for anything out on that trip, then I have it. But in here, I carried the basic repair stuff that I needed, so tube, plug, tire lever, and multi-tool, plus the pump over on the left side of my frame bag. My teammate Kurt, who I was riding with, he carried a more robust repair kit. And to balance that, as far as distribution, I carried the first aid kit. So in this little bag, stuff that hopefully I don't need, but if I need it, it's accessible. And it's heavier, so it's down in the down tube by the bottom bracket. Also in the cooking, camping gear distribution, as I was traveling with someone, we didn't need to have redundant gear, so I carried the pot and the stove, as you just saw, and Kurt carried the fuel and a lightweight tarp, should we need a shelter. We never ultimately set it up, we just slept out. So in the frame bag, this is what I'm ending with. So just one extra goo hydration tab, electrolytes, and then the 2 snacks that I didn't actually consume. I always try to carry something that I don't plan on eating, for, you know, getting me extra distance if I do run out of food, or for helping a bonk, reversing a bonk. And so I have a Goo Octane Summit tea. So there's your carbs and caffeine, and then a trail butter, peanut butter brownie blend, which would be the fat for longer sustained energy. So these 2 things combined could get me pretty far if they needed to. Because the trip's over, this is now just stuff so things don't rattle, with like my little toiletry possibilities bag. In here I have hand sanitizer, have my supplements, toothbrush, toothpaste, a battery bank to charge my phone and my Garmin, so there are the 2 cords, my spoon. I ration 2 wet wipes a day, so there's a leftover one, an extra electrolyte thing, an extra hair tie, lighter, my other little supplements, and that's it. And then the last thing in here right now is the windscreen for the stove. When I started this trip, this was mostly full of food. When I started the trip, this was mostly full of food, and that little possibilities bag was in my backpack, which was fine. Then in the jerry can, this is generally where snacks for that immediate day are, and so right now it's just trash of things I had in the last ride. So last day, Rocktain, peanut M&Ms, Goo waffle, Snickers bar, all the necessities. That's everything on my bike. I guess mine is just my GPS, which is mounted here, the Garmin Edge 840 Solar. This had the route loaded on it. I mostly had it on the map screen, and it was fully charged when I started. By day 4, after 3 full days of riding all day, it was down to about 20% in battery, and so I charged it overnight just so I'd have for sure enough the last day, and that was it. It did wonderfully, so it barely needed to be charged. And then I did carry a pack, mostly to have water and have an easy way to get layers for during the day on and off. So in addition to what I wore during the day, which I'll, as a base system, which I'll cover in a moment, I had this thinner Patagonia riding jersey, a wind shirt jacket, and a Durham Storm rain jacket. Most mornings I started with all of those things on and slowly took them off. So I have a Phoenix headlamp, which I was riding in the last morning and just pulled it off my head in the morning and threw it in my pack. And then in here for my kind of foundational water carrying system, I had a 2-liter Hydro Pack bladder with a insulated hose. And then in addition to that, I carried a 1-liter Hydro Pack Be Free Squeeze filter. They're easily grabbable when I needed to filter water. And over in this other pocket, also accessible as a trowel for digging a cat hole. The only other thing that was in my pack that is no longer, it's just my credit card, some cash, and truck key. And then in these pockets, I also had snacks and chapstick, and my phone was generally there. So on my body, had helmet, glasses, and riding gloves. Early in the morning, I definitely wished I had some warmer gloves, but that feeling didn't last very long. Rode with Shimano AM9 trail shoes, which are amazing. They're very similar to a lot of their other trail shoes in terms of how wonderfully stiff and also hike-bike friendly they are. I wore a bandana for dust and sweat management because it was warm during the day, and style. Carried a little P-Ride couch cloth snapped to the outside of my pack. And then my general base riding clothing system was a pair of Dirtcraft pants and merino t-shirt and a pair of merino socks. As I said earlier, a couple days I put pants on or shorts on during the afternoon just to change it up. And I'd also pull these pants on over my base long underwear at night. So I had 2 pairs of pants at night. So that's everything I brought. Minus the food I started with, which was about 3 days of food. And as I said earlier with the flannel, I got to the trailhead and wanted more layers. And so while I made the most of what I had with me, which was the flannel and that puffy jacket, were I to go out again in these conditions of, cold, long nights and warm days, but particularly cold, longer nights, I would change my insulating layer system a little bit to just be a little bit lighter and more packable. And so the 2 things I would do would either be to just bring the warm, big puffy and that R1 layer, or I could bring a lighter weight down sweater instead of the flannel with this synthetic puffy going over it. And so that system combined would be probably a little bit warmer and definitely lighter and more packable than the flannel puffy combo. But flannel worked out, wool's great, and I was really psyched to have it. So hopefully that process of unpacking and starting to clean up for my trip helped show exactly how I pack to travel as light as possible while also meeting my basic needs of staying warm and dry while out in the mountains and kind of one of the colder times of year for mountain biking.